Welcome back to another episode of What's New in Beauty. My name is e.l.f, and I'm super excited to have you guys here. If it's your first time tuning in, this is essentially the beauty podcast where I love to talk about all new and exciting things happening in the beauty industry and, of course, give my 2 cents on it. Now, when this news came across my timeline, I honestly was so shook. But then I had to say to myself, wait a minute, I actually talked about this last month, so there's no reason as to why I need to be surprised. And it is all about Hailey Bieber's Rhode beauty brand selling to e.l.f. for $1 billion. That's right, y'all, $1 billion. And I actually talked about this back in April when the news actually arose that Hailey Bieber was actually looking to explore the sale of Rhode after she tapped investment bankers at JP Morgan Chase and e.l.f. to find a buyer for the cosmetic brand that she launched in 2022. Now in 2025, selling the brand for $1 billion is here, y'all. And like I said, this news shook up the beauty industry in a way that was really interesting because honestly, the same week that this news came out, Business of Fashion, they put out an article essentially saying how the beauty industry is in its flop era. And I thought this was really interesting, and I had my own kind of internal takes about it. But what I thought was interesting about this is that, although beauty, quote unquote, felt like it was in its flop era, or who knows, maybe still is in its flop era, I think the beauty industry is vastly changing and acquisitions are just kind of the norm. I mean, these are things that obviously have happened throughout the years. We've talked about so many different acquisitions that have happened over the last, I think almost few years, because some brands have been able to be acquired for a good chunk of change. But the $1 billion for Rhode was definitely something, like I said, that got a lot of people had a lot of feelings about it. There was obviously a bunch of people that were very congratulatory, but there was also a bunch of people who had a lot of things to say about it. Now, before I get into that, I actually want to read the article from Kirby Johnson that she has her Substack. And if you're not subscribed to Kirby Johnson's Substack, you need to, because honestly, she was outside of me seeing this news, I think originally on the Business of Fashion Instagram or maybe a different platform. I'm not 100% sure. I'll definitely put it in the notes, but her newsletter was quick. So shout out to Kirby Johnson. And so I'll read exactly what she wrote here on her Substack. But today is the day that e.l.f. announced in a press release that they will acquire Rhode for $1 billion, which is laid out in $800 million of cash and stock at closing, $600 million in cash and 200 million to 2.6 million shares in stock, with an additional potential earnout consideration of 200 million based on future growth in a 3-year time frame. Now, again, e.l.f. actually talks about this a little bit more in depth, and they said that Rhode doubled its consumer base and made $212 million in net sales from March 31st of 2024 to March 31st of 2025. Hailey Bieber will actually be staying on as the founder of the brand, as well as the chief creative officer, as well as head of innovation, overseeing creative product innovation and marketing. She will also be a strategic advisor to both Rhode and e.l.f., and her co-founders Michael D. Ratner and Lauren Ratner will maintain their roles as well, says Bieber. So again, Hailey Bieber did a whole Instagram post about this as well too. And you guys know, I've talked about Rhode a bunch on this podcast. One, because I just think it's in the last few years, it's definitely one of the brands that has definitely came in. And am I going to sit here and say that they totally shook the industry with innovative, very just different type of products? No. However, Hailey Bieber being kind of the it girl, she in a sense has become very influential to a lot of young women, everything from the clean girl to the brownie glazed lips. But what I think is really, really interesting to speak to is that I've said this in the past, and I think I actually said this in the last podcast episode, because I was wondering if she was actually going to stay on, and finding out that she actually is, as well as going to be, an advisor to e.l.f. as well. What I think is really interesting is that she is really the brand, you know what I mean? And, people will say whatever they want to say about celebrity-owned beauty brands, but there are a lot of celebrities that own beauty brands. I mean, I literally just saw the news of Lindsay Lohan wanting to start her brand. I mean, hey, celebrities are going to celebrity, right? But what I think is really interesting to speak to is that Hailey is very much in the fabric of the brand. It wouldn't make sense for her to completely remove herself. I think she'll still show up in a really important capacity of the brand. Definitely, all the things that she's going to be a part of, creative, innovation, marketing, all that totally makes sense. And that's what a lot of celebrities are actually doing. If you actually notice, when you kind of hear about celebrity beauty brands, when you actually go on the LinkedIns or when you actually look at the articles, a lot of these celebrity beauty brands are only just founders or co-founders or creative directors or CBOs or some other made up title that they want to give themselves, because they're not actually the people that are running the companies. They're usually not the CEOs of the company, right? So there's something to also be said about the fact that, if I'm going to be honest, Hailey Bieber was set up to be successful from the jump. You can read a little bit more in-depth articles about it, but from the jump, she was set up for success. I would even go as far to say she created the brand knowing eventually she was going to sell it. Did she ever think that she was probably going to get $1 billion? I mean, hey, you put that into the ether, and you just hope that that's something that you can do. I mean, we talked about this in the past about Selena Gomez and Rare wanting to sell for $3 billion, like things like that definitely happen. However, her being able to do it while other brands have not, I wouldn't even necessarily say being stagnant, but there are brands that may or may not get to this level. And again, Hailey herself being a celebrity obviously helps, but there's obviously a lot of celebrity beauty brands that exist that aren't touching that 1 billion as of yet. And I spoke about this again in the past about how them making $90 million in the month, like things like that are huge. And I have put these things out into the world and said, listen, say what you want to say the brand's overhyped, say that there's issues, say there's this, say there's that. Clearly she figured out a formula. Clearly she was able to do what she was able to do with the team that she had. And this is the next move, you know what I mean? And when you think about it, that 1 billion obviously is going to get everybody excited, but obviously doing the breakdown of the numbers and the stock and the cash, it also just kind of lets you know at the end of the day that there's other things in play, as well as the earnout for 200 million as well too for the future growth. Obviously, e.l.f. knows what is going to be happening underneath there. I'm sure Hailey also knows as well too. I've spoken about the fact that, Rhode is really good at being able to kind of tease things in a way that get people excited. So I have no doubt that they're going to reach that 200 million based on that, the 200 million that they're going to get with that future growth in that 3-year period, especially considering what they were able to do in these 3 years. So there's something to be said about that. Now, I just want to jump over to Glossy as well too, because of course, like I said, every beauty publication decided to get into this even further. And I wanted to talk about a little bit of the business aspect as well too, and kind of what's in store for e.l.f. Beauty as well. So e.l.f. Beauty actually owns the affordable beauty brand e.l.f., as well as Alicia Keys's Keys Soul Care brand, and as well as Susan Yara's Naturium brand, which they were acquired in 2023, which we talked about on this podcast. So definitely check back on that episode. So it's actually really interesting because I've been hearing a lot of things about e.l.f. kind of just like figuring things out. And, there was also some recent news about them talking to their community and saying that, hey, the prices are going to be risen again because of the tariffs. And there was obviously a bunch of people who were just kind of like, are you raising them because of the tariffs, or are you raising them because you just spent $1 billion on this beauty brand? So obviously, everybody was kind of giving their 2 cents and whatnot, but they actually announced this acquisition on their fourth quarter 2025's earning call, which I thought was really interesting as well too. So again, going back to Glossy and this article, they essentially say, we can't wait to bring Rhode to more faces, places, and spaces. From day one, my vision for Rhode, and this is Hailey Bieber from the press release, my vision for Rhode has been to make essential skincare and hybrid makeup you can use every day, which is so interesting to me because, like, her even kind of mentioning this, I wouldn't, again, we got to understand that, when you have people who are on, kind of helping you with the day-to-day of running your company, I always thought it was so interesting because I talked about this in the past, how Rhode came out the gate with skincare, right? They came out the gate with skincare. Everybody was definitely obsessed with it. The glazed milk toner, I think, is the thing that's definitely kind of taken off from the brand. And so they put out a bunch of kind of things. It wasn't a bunch of SKUs. Like, you have a lot of people saying that there was less than 10 SKUs. Or there was 10 SKUs exactly. So that kind of solidified the brand with just different kind of colors and whatnot as well, with like lip glosses and blushes and all that stuff. But what's really interesting to note as well is that, again, Hailey, I think from the jump was set up for success. The amount that they've been able to, create and hype and excitement and, of course, sales is obviously quite imperative, because I just don't think a brand or conglomerate like e.l.f. would just kind of put things out if they didn't think that, they could go ahead and recoup that. Something, again, that the Glossy article talks about is e.l.f. Beauty stated that Rhode achieved that 212 million in net sales in the past 12 months purely through D2C, which is actually something really interesting to know, because Rhode is going to launch in in Sephora in later 2025. So again, I could even see e.l.f. kind of saying to themselves, like, listen, we got to get in now, because once they get into Sephora, it's going to totally take the brand to a whole new level. I was literally just reading an article about Sol de Janeiro, talking about how, like, the fact that we're in Sephora is the best kind of calling card we can possibly have. And so the simple fact that we're in Sephora, that has allowed our brand to be as successful as it is, as well as D2C, but also now is allowing us to be in places like Ulta and other retailers as well too. So I have no doubt that Rhode is just going to 1,000% take off once they do get into Sephora as well too. Something that the e.l.f. Beauty CEO actually spoke about on the earnings call. They said, we plan to invest in marketing and fuel their disruptive marketing engine to further Rhode's brand awareness and further build its community of loyalists. We also plan to leverage our expertise and help Rhode further move into retail distribution. So it would be really interesting to see how they do there. Of course, as everybody knows, or maybe you don't know, when most brands kind of enter into Sephora, I mean, there's different types of avenues that they can kind of get into. I find majority of the time when brands enter Sephora, depending on the type of brand, they sometimes are only exclusively online, and specifically they're only going to be exclusive to the US. And then as they slowly but surely kind of do well is kind of when the brand does expand either in store or into Canada or into certain places as well too. Obviously, of course, when you go into Sephora, you might see like that next big thing section as well too, which I can see Rhode being there, but who knows? There could be a whole new other section that happens for them, where Glossier, for example, when Glossier entered Sephora, they had a whole gondola and everything ready to go. So who knows about how that's going to look for them, but just overall them actually moving into retail distribution with Sephora. And I could totally also see Ulta in their future as well too, considering their consumer base definitely is between that, like, I would say maybe 18, 19, maybe even a little bit younger to maybe 25. And then obviously you have, the plus 25s. But I totally see, it being a hit at Sephora and then eventually being a hit, whether it's online or then eventually in store, and then like events and activations and, even potentially the birthday gifts and how brands are able to funnel things that way and be very successful for them. So I totally see those things kind of happening down the line. Again, something that they speak to as well is that we see potential to provide Rhode with opportunities to broaden its product assortment and innovation in the skincare and hybrid makeup categories and expand into new adjacent categories in the future, which is actually really interesting because, again, Rhode to me is not like, I'll say this, like, the adjacent categories as well as the hybrid makeup categories. Right now, I really think the makeup side of Rhode is where the brand is. Do I see them coming out with other skincare things as well too and doing well? Yes-ish, but I really do see the makeup kind of being the full-fledged thing that kind of takes them over, really takes them to the next level. And then that new adjacent categories as well too. I think about wellness and how wellness is huge, and how, Hailey herself is somebody who has a little bit of that, it's makeup, it's skincare, it's wellness, like there's all those, little piece elements as well too. I mean, things like the Skinny Confidential, like, totally. I just brought up the Skinny Confidential only just because I know they came out with wellness things as well, and a lot of people loved that. So I totally see, them kind of just becoming, honestly, a lifestyle brand. And if they're smart, that's kind of the play that I would go with, because at the end of the day, and I'm only really saying that just because I just think Rhode is already a lifestyle. They've been really, really smart and strategic about how they're, kind of showcasing themselves to people. And I've even kind of seen that Rhode has been really, really good at kind of curating who their exact customer is or their exact type of community member. And I've kind of seen people slowly but surely kind of morph themselves into that. And it really does remind me of Glossier, because I talk about Glossier a lot with like clients, and I just kind of talk about it in general. And like, I remember I bought maybe like one product from Glossier. I bought the brow flick when it came out years ago, really just because I wanted to test it out. And at the time I was working at a beauty bar where we were doing brows and lashes and the whole nine. And I personally just wanted to see what the hype was. And I didn't really like the product. I thought, it just wasn't my jam. But what I admire about Glossier, and I believe I talked about Glossier last podcast as well too, and actually them potentially, filing bankruptcy. But I wanted to speak about Glossier in the early days. There was like an infectious feral energy, like lifestyle. Like there was like an archetype for somebody who really loved Glossier, and they really nailed that. They kind of remind me of Merit as well too, where like they've really nailed their like brand story, their identity, who exactly is like the person that fits this, brand, everything down from like what they wear in their hair to the music they listen to the clothes they wear, to the conversations that they have, what kind of perfume and what kind of notes that like they've really nailed it. And so I really think Rhode fits in that. You know what I mean? Like they really understand exactly who their customer base is. And that customer base is Hailey Bieber. You know what I mean? Like she has essentially created her dream kind of brand. And by proxy, because it feels very authentic to her, everything kind of follows suit. So I think that's also something really interesting to speak to as well. And I also wanted to speak to a couple other things as well about this I keep saying accusation, like it's accusation, but it's acquisition. I also wanted to speak about an article that I briefly came across, because before I kind of get into some other things that I want to kind of speak to, a couple of things that kind of come to mind when I think about this brand and, maybe potential ways that they've been able to be successful, and, some teachable things that I think could be very valuable. But I also just wanted to speak about this quickly because this was an article that came up on Yahoo Finance, because you guys know I get my beauty alerts. This was actually really interesting because the title of this article is called "Hailey Bieber Had a Valid Reason for Selling Rhode Beauty Claim Sources." So this is very much hearsay or allegedly. So of course the news of her selling the brand is the big news, but reports are actually indicating that the sale was strategic, paving the way to actually focus on her husband's upcoming streetwear brand. I believe it's called Skylark, which is her husband, Justin Bieber. And there was this, and again, this could very much be hearsay, but who knows? Like, I totally kind of see this potentially being that, because I'll just say this, Hailey Bieber has definitely she's really taken that Bieber name and has really I guess you would say kind of made it her own, in the sense that yes, her celebrity status has definitely taken it, her being attached to Justin Bieber, wife, mother, all that stuff. There is despite what everybody wants to say about the relationship or whatever, and this is not a gossip podcast, so we're not going to get into all that, y'all. I'm not here to be messy, but I totally see how she benefits from being his wife, and how there's a potentiality of if he's deciding to do something brand wise, and she in her own world is a brand founder and a creative director and all these other things. This doesn't seem far-fetched to me, even in the slightest. But I also, I also want to speak to, at the end of the day, that I don't think Hailey Bieber helping Justin Bieber is going to do anything different than if he was going to be, running the company. But then you also got to think about it, again, going back to my theory about how celebrities usually aren't the ones actually running their companies. It's usually CEOs and other people that are kind of running the day-to-day company. But who knows? There could be something that him and Hailey are kind of working out here. So in an exclusive report, the Daily Mail actually conveyed that Hailey's decision to sell her brand was anything but spontaneous. Hailey sold Rhode to e.l.f. for a massive payday, of course. And now she can actually turn her full attention to Skylark, an insider suggested. They also revealed in the coming weeks, you will see her doing more cross-promotion for this. She's helping him in creative strategy and even product development. It's a calculated shift, which I think is really interesting. Again, certain things like that is really interesting to me, because I'll be the first to say everything that you see that you think is, oh my God, this is so cool. Oh my God, this is so relatable. Oh my God, this is so, different. Everybody in the comments is like, oh, the marketing team needs a raise. It's all of that is so strategic, and you guys don't even realize how much people are actually strategizing and putting together campaigns and decks and being so quote unquote, on the money with the things that they do, because all of these things are already planned out, y'all. Trust and believe, the whole cross promotion of things doesn't shock me, because celebrities actually do this all the time. And I actually want to talk about this a little bit with Rhode and Hailey, and how, again, she's been able to do this and really kind of create this excitement around the brand. But this, her kind of helping with creative strategy and product development and all that good stuff, to me, that doesn't seem far-fetched even the slightest. I actually thought it was really interesting, because I had no idea that Justin Bieber was actually thinking about doing this. So to me, it's okay, this is, if he's trying to get into this bag and she is who she is. And again, they're feeding off of each other in a way in which I find when celebrity couples do this, again, there can be massive success. I mean, you have Sable Labs with Idris Elba and his wife, and what that's been able to do. And obviously she's kind of the, running the company, but he'll come in the campaign. Like, it's, again, like, I totally see, but it's still her brand. I believe Sabrina Alba, like, she's still the focus of the brand and whatnot. Idris comes in for the campaigns. They do their couple things. It's cute. So I totally see that kind of being the play here if what this news source is saying is actually true. So we'll see. I just checked out the brand as well too on the Instagram. Doesn't look like there's anything there as yet. I think Justin Bieber put out a teaser carousel last week. So again, it'll be interesting to see how the cross promo of everything happens there. But I also wanted to speak to as well too just some interesting things. You guys know I always have notes. I always have things that I want to kind of dive in a little bit deeper about when it comes to certain things like this. Because I'll be honest, right? I'm not going to be one of those people that's like, Hailey Bieber sold her company for $1 billion. This is how you, like, no, y'all. Like, I'm realistic about these things. And I also just wanted to speak about this as well too, because this was a topic that did come up, and we do have to be honest here. We do have to be forthcoming. I had saw Morgan DeBron talk about this actually, and it was an Instagram post that she did because she really just kind of wanted everyone to just, have a moment. It's like, congratulations to Hailey, congratulations to the team. But we also have to have an honest conversation about how, like, this is great, but can we get this for the lip bar? Can we get this for topicals? Can we get this for the honey pot? Like, brands, Mielle, like, all these brands, even though Mielle and the honey pot have sold, but, like, can we get this for those brands? Because we know how influential and incredible those brands are. And we also have to acknowledge that, like, Black women-owned companies are not getting these type of opportunities. And when they do, and not even like when they do, like, they're getting a Billy, like, when they get a fraction of this, everybody is first to call them a sellout. I mean, I see it. I've talked about it. We talked about it, I believe, last year with the honey pot and how everybody and their mama was dragging the honey pot for filth. And I thought it was crazy because it was like, listen, this is the nature of business. And also, not everybody builds a business just to have the business. Some people do build businesses so that they can be acquired and they can move on and they can do so many other things. So I think it's really interesting how the conversation around acquisitions, even things like private equity, like, there's such a, oh my God, you're a sellout, and oh my God, how could you do this to us? And just an immediate kind of anger almost about how, like, oh, now the formula is going to change. And although some of those things are true, I don't like how, like, when it's time for the Black-owned brands to get these opportunities, and particularly Black women-owned brands get these opportunities, because the funding for Black women-owned brands is like less than, I think, 1% or maybe 5% or 10%. It's a low percentage, y'all. Like, I could be wrong because I've also talked about this in the past as well too, and I don't know if the number has raised significantly or not. I honestly don't think it is, because the amount of Black women-owned brands that are very vocal about their hardships with raising capital and having to kind of just navigate this very, competitive and saturated beauty space, but also knowing that, like, you're just not going to get those types of opportunities if you're not a white founder, and particularly depending if you're a white women-owned founder or you are, you're a white male founder, which, if I'm a keep it a buck, because I've talked about this as well too, I just want to be honest, y'all, a lot of the companies that you see that is headed by sometimes a woman, and I'm going to be honest, particularly a white woman, there is usually a white man that is either the CEO of the company or is sometimes the founder of the company, or there's something going on, but you'll never see him. You'll never, ever see him, because they know that having a woman front and center, that's going to be the seller. That's going to be the kicker. However, a lot of these women are usually not the CEOs of their company. They're usually, again, disguised as, like, founders or, like, chief brand officers or creative directors or, like, whatever. And there's nothing wrong with those titles, but we have to be honest that, like, there are a lot of men that are behind a lot of these beauty brands, and y'all don't know. And I think it's always really interesting because it's like, that's usually what I see. And if you just do your Googles, go on LinkedIn, just look at some of your favorite brands, beauty, lifestyle, wellness, you name it, and look to see who the CEOs of the companies are. They're usually a white guy. And if I'm being honest, the white guy, we never see him. We never see him. And the only time you really do see them is when they kind of talk about, little things here and there, or they do an article, or, they get featured in Forbes, and then we see a photo and we're like, oh, there was a man here. You know what I mean? It's not, why is a man here? It's like, no, there's a man here. So I always think it's really interesting. And I want more of you guys to kind of just like be aware and be hip to the square of like what's actually happening in the beauty industry, and understand that like a lot of the times there are men behind these companies, and they do put their girlfriend or their wife or a woman in front of them because they know that women want to buy necessarily from women. I actually remember there was this brand that I had been following for a while. I don't remember the name of the brand. I think it might be called Gleaming. I'm not 1,000% sure. It could be wrong. But what I thought was really interesting was I had saw the brand rebrand in real time because they were just kind of cleaning things up. They were definitely changing looks of the brand. And it was actually kind of messed up because I noticed that the brand was using primarily Black women to sell the product, because the product was either heavily marketed to Black women, because I believe it was like a clay mask that was helping with acne and hyperpigmentation and all those types of things. And those are, skin concerns that are, everyone kind of deals with those things, but things like acne and hyperpigmentation and dark spots and whatnot, those are things that affect Black women or Black people much more. That's something that we might feel a little bit more self-conscious of. Anyhow, I'm only saying this really because when I was on their Instagram, I noticed that they had primarily Black people advertising and using the product. When it was time for the rebrand, y'all, I was seeing this happen in real time. They totally did a bait and switch. They started making the brand more accessible, showing Asian people, showing white people. And like, I'm not sitting here and saying there's anything wrong about having diversity, but when you build your company off the back of a certain group of people, and this can kind of even speak to the Boy Smells controversy rebrand situation that happened a month ago, where when you build your company off the back of certain people and consistently highlight these people, and I know a lot of those products were also gifted as well too, outside of the customers that were purchasing products, they were gifting a lot of product to people. A lot of the content that they were posting on their page had Black women or Black people. And then when it was time for them to clean things up, quote unquote, is when they decided to go more diverse. And I noticed as well too that like their whole feed changed. And one day, sorry y'all, I'm ranting, but one day there was a blonde hair, blue-eyed white man, seemingly, straight, but I don't want to put any labels, but just seemed like a man, right, who came up and said, hey y'all, my name is so and so and I'm the founder of the company and da da da. And I thought it was so interesting because it was like, wow, talk about pulling the rug under your customer base and totally switching things up. And the fact that we never saw this guy ever, it's one thing for you to have a brand and for you to do your thing, but it's a whole other situation where like we never see you on the page and we only ever see Black people. And now you've kind of just like done a bait and switch. And that was, I believe, the one only post that he did that probably was something that he just had to do just to kind of set the record straight. But somebody actually left a comment and was like, wait a minute, y'all had a lot of Black people on your page and now you don't, or now the whole like look has changed. What's going on? And I remember not wanting to say the quiet part out loud because I wasn't trying to be messy. But I saw that, you know what I mean? And I just think at the end of the day, we should all do our due diligence. We should all, I was trying to say that word in one go and I knew it wasn't going to work. We should all do our due diligence / we should all be very mindful of the brands that we purchase from, because at the end of the day, these companies know that like we are going to purchase from them, but you obviously have the power to purchase from the brands that you feel represent you the best. And I also think it is incredibly misleading when a brand uses a group of people to market their products, and then when it's time for them to quote unquote rebrand or sell the company or whatever, they totally do like a 360 and change everything over. I think it's incredibly disingenuous, and I don't think it's wise, and I don't think it's smart. But speaking of smart and, amazing moves that brands are making, let's quickly talk about Rhode, and let's quickly talk about some things that I just noticed about the brand and the company. And again, these are not necessarily things that I'm saying you have to go and adopt all these things and your brand is going to, have these opportunities. I mean, who knows? They might. But these are things that I just noticed from a branding and a marketing perspective that I thought were incredibly strategic. And if you take these things and you apply them to your brand and your company, I mean, go for it. But also understand at the end of the day that there was a bunch of things in place for Hailey to be set up for success, even down the ability, like even down to the fact that like she had the ability to even tap JP Morgan. You know what I mean? Not too many founders can say that they're able to do that, let alone even have the opportunity for a sit down call. So at the end of the day, sure, these are some things that I noticed, and this is why I think the brand itself and the business is quite successful. But at the end of the day, there were a bunch of other factors. And just the obvious, y'all. Pretty white girl, and that has celebrity affiliation and has all the connects in the world, and is not hurting for change, and this is pre even her getting with Justin Bieber. She's a Baldwin, so it was always going to quote unquote be her or someone like her. The congrats are definitely warranted, and like I said, congrats to Hailey and the team and the whole nine. But there are, at the end of the day, all these things were always going to be in place. And like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if she created the brand to sell it anyways. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, the brand, although it does feel very close to her, I don't really feel like it's a pattern beauty with like Tracy Ellis Ross, where like this brand is really like secondary in the sense that like this is like they're almost one and the same. You know what I mean? Like I don't really get that with Rhode, and I'll kind of explain a little bit why with some of the tactics that I kind of saw that they were able to kind of implement, especially on social and just the overall branding. But I even just wanted to speak about overall, like the day that Hailey Bieber said she was going to launch a brand and put out the visuals for that glazed donut and really kind of coin that as well too. And I'm not going to get into the whole, like, she, quote unquote, stole the name from another company named Rhode, and that, company had to like close down. I'm not going to get into that, y'all, because that's a whole other thing. And I think I actually talked about that in another podcast episode. But vision wise, it was clear, it was concise, it was aspirational, which a lot of people don't really talk about. I think a lot of people, they create brands and they're like, oh, I'm creating this because I didn't see anything else on the market. And that's always like the conversation at hand. But it's like, really, you didn't see any other product on the market that does this exact same thing that you're creating? Or you just felt like you wanted something that was your own. And you know what? Hey, be honest about it, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But from day one, she had a vision for the brand. And I think it's actually really, really interesting that like most people, when they launch brands or they launch businesses, they don't really understand that like it doesn't necessarily matter if your brand is making money, like especially in the early stages, right? And I'm not sitting here and saying you shouldn't ever, you got to eventually have products and aspire for, some change and some sales. But you should really be clear on the brand that you were trying to build, the stories that you were trying to tell, and make it very simple for people to understand. If your brand is so aloof and so kind of just like mysterious, and that's not really your bag, like you're not Frank Ocean, you don't really get to do the mysterious thing, right? But it's like if you are somebody who's trying to kind of build a community of people that really rock with you, having a clear, concise, and aspirational feel to your brand is going to be the best ways to do that. And her kind of coming out the gate and saying, like, I want people to feel this way. I want people to, when they think of their skin, I want them to think of a glazed donut, and then them doing the collaboration with Krispy Kreme, like things like that just end up making sense. And so the world is kind of your oyster at that point. You've already built the narrative, you built the story. And so that really allowed people to really latch onto this and let them know that like, ooh, I like glazed donuts. I like, Hailey Bieber. I like my skin feeling fresh and, clean and, glowy and dewy and all these things. And so I don't know what she's launching, but I want it. And that's really what like a brand is. I tell people all the time that, a brand, when you do branding really, really well, it doesn't matter what product you come out with. People just want a piece of it because they are excited for your brand. They trust your brand. They know you. They're aware of the stories you tell. They're aware of the feeling that they're going to have when they have the product, whatever it is. So when you're really clear about that and you build something that's actually aspirational to people, like especially things like social media is a highlight reel. I don't care what nobody says. You can be relatable all you want, but even that relatability is incredibly strategic. And so even something like that is really something important to kind of note as well, because everybody's like, oh, she's just so real. And, it's this and it's that. And it's like, guys, all these things have been talked over. There's been 80 million meetings about just putting things out, because at the end of the day, it's about strategic relatability, right? It's not just putting things out and just hoping that everyone's going to be excited about it. Or sometimes it is, and then really kind of gauging that and using it as an opportunity to say, okay, like maybe we go forth with this. You know what I mean? So I'm going to get into that bit too, because I think that's what Rhode has been able to do really, 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 really well, is the art of teasing and putting things out and doing them limited wise, and then, selling out and then restocking. And so it creates a lot of FOMO. But like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later. Something as well that I noticed that Hailey was able to do quite strategically was showing up as the founder of the company. And like I said, hiring the right team, right? I think it's really, really important that founders of companies realize that sometimes you're not the best person to run your company. You know what I mean? Like, you're the innovator, you are the product developer, you are the visionary, and that's fine. You aren't necessarily the person that is responsible for your business, figuring out how to make money every single day. And to be quite honest, not every founder is a really good business owner and vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, founders are there to be visionaries, to be the people that are coming up with the innovative formulas, to come up with different ways to keep their audience excited, right? Have that kind of relationship with your audience and do it in a way that feels really, connected. And I think Hailey has been really, really successful in doing that. Like I said, everything with partnering with the right brands, with the right influencers, the right creators, like she's very much tapped in. And that could be just again, a byproduct of her being a young millennial and, navigating it and growing up in an era where you're aware of the beauty industry and you're aware of, who the influential people on the internet is. So she herself has been really, really strategic about the content she puts out, the people that she's partnering with, the people that she's gifting product to, how she shows up for the brand as well. Again, I think founder-led content, gets a really bad rap. And I'm also not the biggest fan of founders showing up all the time. And that's definitely something that I noticed about Hailey, is that she didn't show up every single day on the feed. If you go on the Rhode feed right now, you probably see like in a 3x3 grid of like 9 posts, Hailey probably comes up maybe like once or twice, or sometimes not even at all. Because I think what's been really great about the brand is that the brand doesn't really hang on her only. She's just a really extra fun, exciting cherry on top. And I think everybody goes goo goo gaga for her because of just who she is and her celebrity and whatnot. But like I said, she has been strategic at like teasing things and showing up and having connective points and doing content and really understanding at the end of the day that like people have got to like me. People have got to know me. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I can be the pretty girl, but I also got to like show people how I line my lips and like show them how I do like my 5-minute makeup routine and talk to them about like what we have coming up in the pipeline. And again, it's almost like you feel like she's your friend. And again, founders that know how to do this do really, 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 really well. And again, like I said, they don't always show up. They're not always in your face, because I think a founder like that can be incredibly overexposed. And this is something that I actually tell my clients a lot of the times as well, too. You don't want to overexpose yourself. You really just want to come on when it's the right time and make people kind of miss you in a way, like I said. So at the end of the day, like I said, she strategically showed up as a founder with incredible founder-led content, as well as hiring the right team of people to really, run her company so she could focus on being a founder. Something else that I wanted to speak about is, again, the aspirational, attainable lifestyle that, again, she knew that her community would really want to be a part of, in a way that feels almost like she understands that Rhode is not just a brand or a product. Like, Rhode is really like a lifestyle. And like I said, talking about it before, about them building more of a lifestyle brand, like I really see Rhode kind of almost in a sense maybe potentially being a Goop, where like Rhode is really, or even like a Poosh, like companies that like everybody goes to because they're looking for like the hottest thing or the most interesting thing. And so for me, what I noticed even about the brand, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, is that the brand itself is not so cool girl that it feels like I can't attain this. Like having your lips a certain way, the phone cases, right? The selfies, like an iPhone selfie is like a rite of passage. You know what I mean? And her creating a phone case that everybody and their mom had something to say about that phone case. But I feel like that plus the glosses and the lip, not the glosses, but the peptide lip serum, sorry. That took the brand to a whole new level, and them having different colorways and people wanting to collect them like they were Pokemon cards, like things like that. It really felt like almost like sneaker kind of drop culture where every new drop that was out, people wanted every part of it. And I even remember during like different launches as well too, coming out with mirrors, coming up with other merch pieces, like things that she knew her community would love to have, because a mirror in a purse and doing a flat lay with that is cute, or having your peptide lip serum in your phone case while you're taking a selfie is cute. And so it's almost like part of this life, right? This attainable lifestyle that you want people to have, and being aware that like the girls are going to do this anyway. So we need to like find ways to be a part of their life. You know what I mean? Even outside of them just having the product itself, right? Because I think at the end of the day, people realize that product can only take a brand so far. Like the story, the identity, the lifestyle that your brand creates for people, like one of two things are either going to happen. One, you're going to create your brand that's going to be super cool and it's super dope, that people are going to step out of their day-to-day normal life and figure out, how can I be like this brand? Because everything this brand is aligned with me. Or you realize where your community is, you realize the community that you want to tap, and you figure out, how do we build a brand that exactly exemplifies that? And then so much so that like those people are instantly gravitated towards us because we're specifically speaking to them. And I think both things are actually really, 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 really true. But like I said, I also think the most important thing to note is that Hailey Bieber is the customer of Rhode. Like she herself is the customer of this brand. So it's like anybody that like looks up to her, anybody that looks like her, anybody that can do similar things, like from wearing blazers and like slicking back your hair and like doing all these different things, like you're going to feel an affinity towards that, and you're going to feel like that's attainable for you because you probably have a couple of those things already. And now you have like the blueprint, or now you have the standard, or now you have the product that can help you be exactly like the full version of that, which again, like if you can do, kudos to you, because most people don't understand that like when you're building a brand, you're not necessarily even building it for yourself 100%. You're really building it knowing that. And again, it's a little bit different sometimes with celebrity beauty brands, because like most people want to be like celebrities or have some sort of affinity to celebrities. So it's a little bit of a cheat code actually, because as a celebrity that people are going to be obsessed with you just off the rip. But knowing now that like you are showing them the products you use and showing them how you do a certain technique, like people are going to emulate that because people want to have this sense of like closeness or that parasocial relationship towards you. So that's also going to like be a whole other experience, which like I said, this is why it's just such an anomaly, because not all celebrity beauty brands can do this, and not all celebrity beauty brands are aspirational, and also not all celebrities are aspirational or relatable enough to do something like this. So that's another conversation altogether. Something I also wanted to speak about is like I said, the power of strategic partnerships, right? And experimental marketing. The Rhode Beauty like photo booth, that was taking photos and people were lining up, and, was causing a whole bunch of a storm, like even over Coachella and whatnot. Like those things really allowed people to have an opportunity to connect with the brand IRL, which I've talked about this in the past about how experimental marketing, in-person marketing, events, activations, that's really where marketing is. Like outside of obviously brands sending product to influencers and doing paid partnerships and so on and so forth, the experiences the experiences that they have in person, those are the things that people remember. And those are the things that don't necessarily only include influencers. Those are the things that actually allow the regular customer to interact with the brand in a way that they've never been able to before. And because Rhode is in an interesting situation because they are not available at a Sephora yet, they're not available in retail, it's only D2C, they were really able to create a moment around the activations and the brand events they were having with people. And it really felt almost you felt like an insider almost being there. So that's why people were lining up. That's why people would, repost the things that they were experiencing. That's why it became such a phenomenon, because it's like we don't have any other opportunity to connect with the brand. We also don't have any other opportunity just to connect with Hailey Bieber, because Hailey Bieber's a mom, she's a wife, she's doing all the things, she's running the company, or quote unquote, being the founder of the company. So, we don't have other opportunities to do this. So knowing that, again, leveraging experiences, leveraging the fact that, of course, every pop-up that they had was Instagram ready, like everything from like the gondolas to the atmosphere to the lighting, like all like mirrors, that had really cool inscriptions on it because they knew people were going to take selfies. Like all those things are really, really important to building an experience for people that feels very memorable and also allows them to be in your world. Going back to what I said about it's your job as a brand to create this aspirational, attainable world for people, because you don't want to alienate people from your brand per se. I do think everybody should create a brand that is unique to them. And I wouldn't even go as far to say you want to alienate people, because your brand really shouldn't be for everyone. However, your brand shouldn't be so far removed that people don't feel like it's something that they can actually be a part of. You know what I mean? Like I said, either one or two things are going to happen. People are either going to change themselves to fit your brand, or like I said, they're already going to be who they are. And it's now your job as a brand to bring those people in, right? So again, something really interesting for them is that they had the capital and they had the ability and they had the connections to make their in-person events really exciting for people. Also, they weren't overexposing themselves with the events as well too. They did quite a few pop-ups and different things, of course, around the country. But what I noticed as well was that they were able to do things in a way that felt really exciting. They were on obviously for a limited time, so you had to just get in where you fit in. And like I said, people were lining up for hours. I believe there was also criticism at one point as well too, because people were lining up and, there was they experienced heat stroke and there wasn't any hydration. So I had heard and read something about Hailey and the team as well too and whatnot, giving out waters and giving out treats to people. So again, and we hear about those things all the time about, brands hosting events and it being an absolute shit show for customers. But I think when you go through things like that, again, your best bet is to acknowledge those things, be honest about those things, and do what's right. And also, there was obviously a bunch of criticism online, but all those people that came in person obviously had different experiences as well, too. So that's also something to take into consideration and understand that, whatever people are going to be saying about you online is what they're going to be saying online. The real interactions that you can have with your customers IRL and what that can do, and understanding at the end of the day that that's really, really kind of sort of what matters. Online presence and what people are saying is important, but if all those people are doing are criticizing you versus the feedback you are getting in real life, take that a little bit more into consideration than the trolls. Another thing, again, I wanted to speak about was this focus on really kind of creating desire and understanding the power of demand more than the supply. Like I said, something that I've noticed that Hailey has been able to do, especially being kind of, creative director, co-founder, marketing, what am I trying to say? Marketing aficionado of the brand, I guess you would call it, which, like I said, I'm sure she has a team of people helping her with this. There's a really important thing that I noticed, and it's kind of like a 4 kind of step approach, which again, depending on how you're able to do this, I've seen it, I've seen Rhode do this. And I talked about mood boarding out loud and how really important that is as a brand, just kind of putting things out and really kind of getting a sense of where your community's at with it. But something that I noticed that Rhode has been able to do really well is tease people. Whether it's Hailey wearing Rhode under eye patches or, showing a little, preview of something in a feed post or in a story or something, people eat that up. And once you do enough teasing, once you do enough of that Easter egging, people are going to start paying attention. And I believe there's a Rhode, not Finsta, but there's a Rhode news account that talks about all the new things that are happening with the company. And I wouldn't be shocked if their team decided to create something like that, but it comes off as almost kind of like a fan account in a way. And I think it's really, really interesting because this account also highlights the teasing that happens, in which if you fan accounts and companies and brands creating fan accounts is an actual real thing. So sometimes it's not just like somebody who's just out in the world just creating something. And actually, sometimes even if it is, the brand will then hire that person to keep running that account or to come up with different accounts for that. So I just wanted to speak to that. But the teasing has like that's created the demand off rip, because if we start teasing something and everybody keeps talking about it or everybody's like obsessed with it, we need to do something with that, which then brings them into the waitlist era, which again, this is something I think every brand should be doing as well. Like, I'm not necessarily sitting here and saying like you have to do everything waitlist related, but I am saying that like creating some sort of social proof that people are excited about what this is, or like having it be a gift with purchase, or, being again a waitlist opportunity, and like people just simply putting in their emails or their phone numbers for text, right? And for email marketing. Things like that. If you get enough people, like I've seen brands who will sit there and say, listen, we had 100,000 wait list for this product, so we had to put it out. You know what I mean? Like I've seen that marketing jargon and I've seen those marketing campaigns go out, and they do really well because again, you have those 100,000 people or 50,000 people or sometimes 5,000 people who are excited for this product to come out. And sometimes you could even be selective in saying, hey, we're only going to launch to these people that actually signed up for the wait list, or give the people on the wait list priority to shop said product because they did the extra legwork of actually deciding to sign up, which again can be difficult to do in the climate that we're in and the attention, a span of people being less than, 3 seconds sometimes. So I think again, like I said, they've been really good at teasing. They've been really good at putting wait lists out and really kind of creating, like I said, this kind of exclusivity and this kind of social proof to really show that like we have people that are excited for this. And then on top of that, putting out a limited supply of product, which a lot of companies do this, where they will launch a limited supply of a new launch or sort of things like that. And I've heard a bunch of people talk about how Rhode is definitely guilty of doing this. People being like, "Hey, the new launch came out today. Products were in my cart, or I got the email, but it was already sold out." You know what I mean? And I wouldn't be, again, I'm not in their business, but I wouldn't be shocked if they do have a set cap on the amount of product that they do want to give out, especially in the first round, especially because they're the type of company that they can do $90 million in a month. There's something to be said about there being a sense of like urgency that their community has, and putting out a limited supply to then say, hey, we sold out in 24 hours. Again, that's a marketing campaign. That is, jargon that brands will use to kind of create excitement around a launch. And then once they have that limited supply go out, they'll then do a restock like a week later. You know what I mean? Because so that lets you know, and they'll do the whole, hey, we're working really hard to get things restocked and da 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 da. And I'm here to tell you, as a marketing girly, 1,000% a marketing ploy. 1,000% something that brands will do, really just to see, if we can keep kind of the momentum going. And especially for the people that didn't get it, especially because it did sell out, there's more incentive now for said customers to maybe even stock up, which is that's something also really interesting to speak to as well. Because if you weren't able to get the first drop, then you 1,000% need to be ready for the second drop. And you're probably actually going to go ahead and purchase more because you have something in your brain that's saying, oh my God, like I can't just get one. I've got to make sure I get two. I got to make sure I get three. And what I've noticed also on Rhode's website is they essentially have this kind of system set up where if you purchase one product, there's going to be more opportunities for you to add more things to your cart for like free shipping or like gifts. And like, again, this isn't a new concept. A lot of companies do this. But like I said, if you're the type of customer that knows that certain products are going to sell out quite quickly and you don't want to feel like you have to wait a week or two to get a product, you're 1,000% going to stock up on it. So like I said, Rhode has really kind of mapped out exactly how their customer base is, that when we tease something and we get a lot of comments, or we get a lot of likes, or we get a lot of excitement, or we get a lot of engagement, and we get a lot of feedback, and then we put a wait list out and we get thousands of people who are signing up on the wait list. And then we decide to put the product out. Let's say we only put out, instead of 1,000 SKUs, maybe we'll do 500 and really see what happens, what we can do there. And, it's kind of almost like a rat race. Who are going to be the 500 out of the 1,000 that are going to get said product? And then, of course, put that out and say, hey, y'all, we sold out in 2 hours or 4 hours or in 24 hours. And then, of course, do a restock a week later and, more people are going to go ahead and purchase. So like I said, I've peeped it and I ain't mad at it, because sometimes especially for a brand that's only D2C, sometimes those are things that you have to do, because again, the sense of feeling like you're overexposed or that everybody's having something. Like I said, Rhode is really for a certain type of customer. It's for the type of customer that understands that, like, I want to be the first to have one of these things. I want to be one of the it girls. I want to be the one who has the phone case, right out the first gate. And so there's that sense of almost like I'm one of one, you know what I mean? And I've noticed that 1,000% with their customer base as well too. Hey, I even purchased Rhode products in the past, as I've told y'all. And, I understand the hype. I'm not going to sit here and say that the products are, like I said, revolutionary enough for me to keep purchasing, especially at that price point. But I understand why people are definitely feral about it. My last 2 points that I wanted to speak about is differentiating their product line and not only doing skincare, but doubling down on makeup and accessories. I've talked about this in the past as well, too. I really think what took Rhode to the next level was launching makeup and understanding that, like, yes, people love skincare. Like I said, the glazed milk toner was 1,000% a hit product, but there was a bunch of other products that Rhode came out with that not everybody and their mom are excited for. And I've definitely talked about them as well and how exciting they were and the PR and all that stuff. But the makeup really took them to the whole new level. Everything from the peptide lip serum shades to the blushes that they came out with and the lip liners, of course, that they came out with. I mean, if they continue on that trajectory, they're going to be out of here, because there's so many other things that they can do, of course, in the makeup category. And like I said, something that's really interesting about business, right, is that you've got to kind of always, I understand wanting to create things, but you have to create things that people are going to buy. And like, although Rhode is a skincare company first, there's obviously the conversation about it being, skincare hybrid makeup or makeup hybrid skincare. Or, I even just see some articles just call Rhode a makeup company, you know what I mean? And the skincare part is not included. So I think at the end of the day, you gotta go where the wind blows / where clients and customers are asking for. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that they're gonna abandon skincare altogether. I definitely think there's definitely more to come, like eye serums and SPF and all these other things that I totally see them getting into, especially with the cosmetic chemists that they have on this team. But makeup, like post-pandemic or post-2021, like everybody and their mom wants makeup, and makeup is definitely having a moment. People, I feel like, have taken care of their skin enough. And people, are doing more, intricate things with their skin as well, too. So they know it's not just a serum or a face wash or whatnot anymore. Now they kind of just want to make sure they get their makeup routine down pat. And what I think Rhode has built so far is letting me know that they're definitely on a trajectory of wanting to do more makeup, but definitely having that skincare element to it as well, too. So it does feel like you're also taking care of your skin while, of course, having gorgeous makeup products. And last but not least, I just wanted to speak to as well just the importance of, understanding at the end of the day, when you are building a brand, you're not just, again, building a brand for yourself and necessarily everything that you're doing. Like, as much as I've said that this brand is a representation of who Hailey is, I also think she realizes that she can be somebody that, like, listen, her look and what she's able to do, I've seen girls do it. And I've seen girls will, do the Hailey Bieber inspired makeup and hairdo and outfits and whatnot. And so what I'm sitting here and saying, it's not so far removed that people don't feel like they can kind of copy or replicate or attain that from themselves. And so I think if you understand at the end of the day, the brand that you're building, yes, has to feel connected to you, but not so connected that people don't feel like they can relate to it or have something in it that they feel like they can adapt for themselves. Like that's really half the battle. Like instead of focusing only on the business element of it, focus on really building a brand that can stand a test of time. And I really do see Rhode being a brand that really becomes a lifestyle brand for a lot of people and really becomes a brand that people are going to go to or want to go to for so many other things other than skincare and makeup. You know what I mean? Like when I mentioned Goop, like I didn't just say that sparingly. I meant it in a way that like Goop is really a lifestyle brand. And yes, they've got product and Gwyneth Paltrow and all these other avenues to it. But at the end of the day, Goop is a lifestyle. And it's like, if you're in that lifestyle, then you're going to like love everything that we do, right? Everything from product to recipes, to food, to all these other things that they're coming out with. So again, I totally see Rhode following in that same footsteps. Beauty obviously being its main, reason why people love it. But at the end of the day, it's all going to be about building a lifestyle. And like I said, congrats to Hailey and the team. Congrats to everybody involved. But I also just, like I said, wanted to speak to the simple fact that, like, at the end of the day, this was probably always going to be in the cards for Hailey. And so I'm really excited to see what else Rhode is going to be up to this year. Obviously, the launch into Sephora is probably going to be huge. The rollout for that is probably going to be insane. And I'll probably talk about that as well, too. But in the meantime, y'all, just understand at the end of the day that, like, yes, these things are attainable for you, but also understand that there are certain people who have certain things set up in place for these things to happen. And I'm not sitting here and saying don't work your ass off and don't, do what you need to do, but understand that, like, there's things that you can just do to make sure that you build a brand that stands a test of time, whether you choose to sell it or whether you choose to keep owning it. It doesn't really matter. What matters is you are doing something that you love and you feel that's really attached to you, and you feel like it's something, like I said, that can even potentially outlive you. You know what I mean? Like, I think that is a real true testament of a brand that can stand a test of time and a brand that is focused on really building a lifestyle. And at the end of the day, being a brand founder is such an insane journey, but it's incredibly rewarding. And so I give praise to all beauty brand founders. And aside from people talking about beauty being in its flop era and everybody having qualms and conversations to say and everyone being like, oh, the beauty industry is being taken over by private equity. Like, listen, business is going to business. Things are going to happen, but understand that you are on a path of building something that is bigger than you. Now, without further ado, y'all, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of What's New in Beauty. And of course, if you have anything else that you want to share with me, DM me on Instagram at socially savvy Nia. Until then, y'all, I will see you in the next episode.